This is Yair Davidiy. I'm speaking to you from the land of Israel. I represent BRIT-AM, Hebrew nations, a body of like-minded people who believe that the lost 10 tribes are amongst Western peoples, especially the English-speaking peoples. Rather, they're amongst Western peoples in Western Europe, that represent the 10, that altogether represent the 10 lost tribes, with the English-speaking peoples representing among the tribes of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, were part of the 10 tribes. So we discuss this, we examine it, we research it from all different angles, from all different disciplines and fields of study. We concentrate on the Bible, also on rabbinical sources, traditional Jewish sources, also history, general history sources, mythology, archaeology, anything which is somehow or other pertinent to it. We study it. We also take cognizance of other studies, DNA studies and so on, where their findings are pertinent to us. And we are also involved in ongoing commentary on current affairs and things connected to us, connected to the state of Israel, to the Jewish people, to Zionism, to the Anglo-Saxon nations, to America, to Britain, to Western Europe and related peoples. And they all come together, they all have something to tell us, and they all are pertinent to study of the lost 10 tribes, because that is the lost 10 tribes are. As we said, we prove that the lost 10 tribes are amongst Western peoples from several different points of view. And one of them is the Bible. The most important one is the Bible. We concentrate on the Bible because everything begins from the Bible. And the Bible also has something to say on this subject. The Bible tells us that the Judah, that is the Jewish people, represented in the Bible under the name Judah, in the end times, or just before the end times, would not know who the 10 tribes are. They would not know, on the whole, not know where they are. Isaiah 49:21. Not only would they not know where they are, but they themselves would not know who they are. On the whole, we are trying to reveal this to them, and others are also doing the same. But we are a small minority at the moment, and but nevertheless we do what we can. So the Bible tells us this, that in the end times the 10 tribes would not know who they are on the whole. Judah would not know who the 10 tribes are either, but they would be in existence. They would be, on the whole, unaware of their ancestry. They would be practicing a non-Jewish religion. See Hosea 2:8, 2:13, 2:16, 11:12. But they would be having an effect. It would be a prominent nation amongst the nations of the earth. It would become one of the most numerous groups of people that had ever existed. This was promised by the Almighty, irrevocably promised. See Genesis 15:5, 22:17, 24:60, 32:12, Numbers 23:10, Deuteronomy 1:11, Isaiah 10:22, Isaiah 24:16, 26:15, Hosea 1:10. The 10 lost tribes, even though they were lost and not aware of their ancestry, they would be having an effect, playing a role in the world. They would be the most powerful group of peoples on the whole. See Genesis 27:9, Numbers 24:7, Micah 5:7-9. They would be the richest, amongst the richest. They would possess the most mineral and agricultural resources. See 27:28. 49:25, Deuteronomy 33:13-16, Hosea 2:8. To live in the best places, that is, having the most salubrious climates. And this is important. People who study geography know that this is important. An inconvenient climate can impair human progress. It is very important, and most of the nations, all the nations in effect that we number amongst the Western tribes, they have reasonably healthy climates, climates that invigorate them, do not enervate them, do not bring sicknesses to them, but invigorate them. And this is how it should be, and this is what was prophesied that it should be. See, Isaiah 41, 8-9, there would be in islands on the whole. This especially refers to the tribes of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, that on the whole there would be in islands and peninsulas and islands, it says Isaiah 42, 4, 49, 1-6, Jeremiah 31, 9-10, there would be in peninsulas, Jeremiah 31, 8, at continental extremities, at the ends of the earth, continental extremities, as it says several times, see Deuteronomy 33, 13, Isaiah 24, 16, Isaiah 26, 15, 41, 8-9, 49, 6. They would be seafarers. They would be seafarers. Many nations of the earth are not seafarers, are not natural seafarers, and this is not one of their proclivities, but is the proclivities of the descendants of lost ten tribes, or of a good portion of the tribes, especially the tribes of Joseph, also Zebulun, also Asher, Dan, and others are all known as being seafaring peoples. We gain control over strategic points regarding their potential adversaries. See Genesis 22, 16-17, 24, 60. They would be like a lion and a unicorn. See Numbers 24, 8-9. If your version of the Bible does not say it like this, look it up in the King James Version. King James Version is often more reliable than other versions, and the people who put it together were scholars in their own right, and very often it is preferable. And it mentions the lion and the unicorn being associated with the 10 tribes in the end times, and the lion and the unicorn are the symbols of Britain on the British coat of arms. Also the bald-headed eagle is mentioned in connection with the lost 10 tribes, 116, which is the symbol of the USA. They would be a warrior nation, a formidable nation, a warfaring nation when necessary. See Numbers 24, 7-9, Micah 5, 7-9, Deuteronomy 33, 27, Deuteronomy 33, 29, Jeremiah 51, 20-21, Zechariah 10, 7. They would primarily, not all of them, but primarily they would be located to the west, placed to the west and to the north of the land of Israel. See Isaiah 24, 14, Isaiah 24, 14, Isaiah 110, Isaiah 49, 12. Also a trail of megalithic dolmens or edifices that are often attributed to the Stone Age, but actually in effect were often put up much later, even unto recent times. And these megalithic monuments, so-called megalithic monuments, dolmens, they show a trail of migration from the land of Israel and from Jordan, which is also part of the land of Israel in biblical times, to the north, into Turkey, across the Caucasus, into Bulgaria, and from Bulgaria across to Brittany and France, and then up the coast, Belgium, the Netherlands, into Scandinavia and Denmark, also across the sea into Ireland and Britain. All those areas have megalithic monuments, and they trace a pathways of migration, or one major pathway of migration from the land of Israel to those areas. Another pathway of migration was through the Mediterranean, through islands in the Mediterranean, into Spain and France, and from there across to the British Isles and to Ireland. And then it was prophesied that this is what there would be, and we were exhorted to take notice of it, to use it to prove the pathway of migration of our ancestors, the ancestors of the lost 10 tribes to those regions. See Jeremiah 31, 21. Scripture gives numerous other identifying characteristics taken as a whole, can only apply to the people, this group of peoples that we've spoken of, found in Western Europe, especially in Britain and its offshoots in North America. And these assertions of ours based on the simple literal truth of the Bible as it's written, are confirmed by rabbinical commentators in a big rabbinical commentary, and they use the verses that we quote as pertaining to the lost 10 tribes. Also, Jewish legends and traditions from the Second Temple period also confirm what we have said. They had legends. They said that the 10 tribes, the lost 10 tribes, the Rechabites and the sons of Moses who were associated with the 10 tribes, were to bring the islands of the blessed, meaning in classical literature, Britain an island. And this is also confirmed by apocryphal Jewish and other writings that have survived from those times, they are still extant. You can study them in libraries and in books quoting from them. Also, we have Arab sources borrowed from the Jews that say the same. Josephus, 37 CE to 100 CE. It was Josephus, the same Josephus who wrote the Wars of the Jews and Antiquities of the Jews, the primary historian of ancient Israel, at least in classical literature. And he wrote a paraphrase of the prophecy of Balaam. Balaam was a pagan prophet who was recorded in the book of Numbers as having uttered prophecies concerning his own end times. And Josephus gives a paraphrase of what Balaam said. And amongst other things, he quotes him as saying that the multitude of your posterity, that is your descendants, shall live as well in the islands, as on the continent, and be more in number than other stars of heaven. So you're saying that the 10 descendants of Israel in the end times would be on the continent of Europe, and also on the islands. There's the British Isles adjoining them. And they would be extremely numerous. This would also apply to North America. It also been it was established by people from Britain and still has characteristics of the British and of the Irish and of peoples from Western Europe who have established it and set it up and populated it. Also, the Bible in the original Hebrew, in the book of Obadiah, 1 verse 120, speaks of the first exile of Israel being in Zarephath. Zarephath in Hebrew means France. Zarephath in Hebrew means France. Obadiah says that the first exile will be in France. Rashi, the primary commentator of scripture and also of related literature, the Talmud and so on, Rashi says that Zarephath means France, refers to France, the kingdom known as France. And he says the lost 10 tribes came there. At the first, the lost 10 tribes came to that region. That was what Rashi says, the most important biblical commentator in the Jewish list of commentators is Rashi, and that's what he says. He lived at 1040 to 1105 in the Middle Ages in France. And he says that the lost 10 tribes went to Sepharad, Abarbanel, who is also lived in the 1400s. He was also a very important commentator. He says that by Zarephath, the Bible refers not only to France but also to Britain. And because the exiles went to both France and to Britain, Nahmanides, 1194, 1270 in the Book of Redemption, Part 1, he says that Zarephath refers to the tribes of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, at the extremities, at the far corners of the far north, and that they are destined to defeat the arch enemy of Edom, often taken as referring to Germany or as forces on continental Europe in general. So all these are worth taking notice of and taking them together and comparing one to another, and you see how a composite picture is derived, they can only point to the peoples in Western Europe and peoples in the British Isles, as we have said. And that is what we have concerning the Lost Ten Tribes being in the West. So that is a point that we have given to you very succinctly, only giving telling you what the verses said and giving you the sources so that you can look them up. In future talks we will go into these verses and read them out and explain them and elaborate upon them and show how they do say what we say they say, and that what we said, how we explain them, is consistent with how they were meant to be understood.